Kindness is something, and courtesy. I mean, you have these things now. It's hard not to get addicted on the reels. On social media, you see people doing acts of kindness, and it's wonderful. We need more of that, and it applies in your corporate culture. Being kind to one another and being courteous is something that everyone deserves. If you're being nice to the cashier who is getting your groceries, or someone you're getting, you have just a transaction with, if you can be courteous to them, how much more courteous should you be to the people you're working with every day?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders in Tech podcast, where we're shining the light on leaders that are empowering people to create technologies that are making this world a better place. And today we have with us Rob Teel. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, David.
Rob, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live, and where are you working at right now?
Sure. My name is Rob Teel, and I live in Oklahoma City. I'm working as the Chief Technology Officer for the state of Oklahoma, and I also do some startup advising and other stuff on the side. Recently, I published a book on leadership, so I've got lots of things going on.
That's beautiful, and congratulations on your book. Writing a book is not easy. I had the inspiration of writing my first book in 2013. I wrote the table of content on a piece of paper, and it took me until 2019 to start writing it, to have the energy to start writing it. And it took me over a year to actually write it. I released it in 2020.
Excellent. It was the same. I did an outline and then started to do it chapters. I tried to come up with my chapters first, and then had that as an outline, and then started to build on that and just work through it every week. And so it is a labor of love, and it does take a lot longer than you think, especially some of the other detail components like editing and all this. So it takes a while, but it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. It's definitely an exercise that will motivate you and inspire you and really make you think about the why you feel and do the things that you do.
And Rob, I don't ever think we will ever make a lot of money from writing a book. For me, it's an act of love, right? So when you write a book, is that you want to leave a legacy of the learnings that the Lord has given you during your lifetime. So it's really unconditional love. And on top of that, it's very expensive to write a book. It's not cheap. What motivated you to write it?
Well, what happened is I do technology conferences and panels quite frequently. I'm invited to speak. And in most of those conferences, it's death by PowerPoint. You're there all day. Everyone's talking about their technology, and it gets mind-numbing. By the end of the day, you're just begging for mercy on, do I have to hear one more technical talk? Even though I am a technologist, so I like the subject. But I try to when I get invited to these, I always try to break it up a little bit by doing talks on leadership in IT. And so I hosted a couple panels and started asking questions of the panelists, people that were there, because I was hosting the roundtable. And I floated this idea out to them on asking them how they make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Now, I know that sounds extremely unique, because it is, but when you're dealing with a lot of engineers and people in the STEM field, super high intellects, it was a great way for me to help them communicate and kind of break down barriers as far as some of the ways that they see the world. And I went around the table and asked all these CIOs and CTOs and asked them a series of questions. It's actually a number of questions, like 30 to 50 questions that they could asked. And I got an unbelievable response. They said that was one of the best panels that they'd ever been on, roundtables. And so at first I just thought it was a one-off thing, like, okay, maybe these guys are just being nice to me. So I did it 2 or 3 more times and got the same response, that people loved it. And that was really all I needed. There's enough encouragement for me to say, I'm going to sit down and write about this. And so I sat down and wrote about it, and it's been really, really fun. It's a fun book because it's very lighthearted, even though I touch on some very serious topics. It's fully illustrated, and it all goes around. The business outcome is the sandwich, but how everyone makes the sandwich is very different, which is what you should be tuned into as the leader. Because now you're all going towards the same business outcome, but you're giving them the sandwich exactly how they prefer it. It goes down, do you like it cut down the middle, or do you like it cut at an angle? What's your ratio of peanut butter to jelly? What kind of bread do you like? What do you make the sandwich on? Is it a paper napkin, a paper plate? Is it a wood cutting board? What are the utensils that you use? What's your favorite peanut butter? What's your favorite jam? So something as simple as this, and then all of a sudden you realize that most leaders don't pay attention to the way that their people prefer to be led. They just do a one size fits all. Everyone's going to get my leadership exactly the way that I think they should have it. Now, mind you, you are getting the same business outcome, because in the end, everyone gets a sandwich. So I use that as a metaphor for business outcomes. And I use the process of making the sandwich of how you should actually lead others by understanding what their preferences are. For example, if someone told me that they were allergic to peanut butter and I kept giving them peanut butter on their sandwich, how many times do you think it would take them before they thought that I didn't care? Maybe the first time, if I gave them a sandwich with peanut butter on it, even though they told me they had a peanut allergy, they would say, well, he's busy. He probably just forgot. Do it the second time, and now, well, maybe he's not listening. You do it the third time, and he doesn't care. So the idea is, by listening and finding out how people can be optimized and be happy at work and love what they do and be highly productive, be an amazing member of a team. That's the job of the leader, to find that out. So that's the whole premise of the book, is understanding how people prefer to be led and then adjusting your leadership style to meet their needs. And with everyone moving towards the same business outcome, which is the mission of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish as an organization or team.
That is beautiful, Rob. How long did it take you to write it and publish it?
Well, I actually wrote it in about 4 or 5 months. So I wrote it pretty quickly. The publishing part took a lot longer because of all the editing. And then I had the core of it written pretty rapidly. But then as you go and reread it, you have to make things smooth and make all the narratives work. And I wanted it to be more of a narrative style instead of a typical leadership book. So I made it very narrative based and tried to bring it all together. So that took me a little bit longer, but most of the writing portion was that. But now it's been almost 1 year in April that I have actually started it, and now you can go get it on. You can go and order the book. So it was 1 year, just like yours, probably. Yeah.
You're right. I remember what I did is I read a book called How to Write a Book to figure it out, right? And the book, what the author said is, the first and most important mistake that people do is that they start revising their first transcript too early, and then they stop because there's too much editing. So he said, just write the entire book from scratch, don't fix anything, and then you edit. So I'm like, I did that. Little did I know that the editing was going to take 5 times longer than actually writing the first manuscript.
It was the exact same thing for me. The editing took so much longer because you get your basic thoughts together and then you refine them. And I will say, when you're writing, it's extremely humbling, because if you've come up in work and business and life, you've had a lot of mentors and people that have guided you along the way. So you feel like you're standing on their shoulders. And it is humbling because there's so much literature out here on the subject. And it makes you pause and say, well, what do I have to contribute to this discipline of leadership, whether you're in IT or a CEO or even leading a nonprofit organization? What do I have to contribute? And so it is very humbling when you sit down and you try to put something to paper. My idea was to try to make it fun. I'm in a business in IT where our job is not always fun. It's very tedious, it's long hours, and there's nothing exciting necessarily about looking at a computer screen unless you're solving people's problems, like what you're doing on the screen is actually solving a really important thing. Then you can get motivated. But overall, you've got to create your own fun in this business. And so I tried to write a book that was very fun. It's illustrated all throughout it. It's almost like a comic book style. And so that's in there. And what I found is that I just reread it myself because I just ordered all the copies. And I found myself laughing in every chapter, which is exactly what I wanted. I couldn't be more pleased to be able to talk about a hard subject. And at the end of each, and when I'm going through it and I get to the illustrations, it makes me laugh. And so I like it. It's something that I would consume as a person because I try not to take myself too seriously.
That is fantastic, Rob. If I went to go buy a book, buy a copy of the book, where can I go?
You can get it on Amazon. So you can, the title of the book is Lunch Sack Leadership. There's my website is lunchsackleadership.com. So just think of a brown sack. That's your lunch sack. And then just add leadership on the end of it. It's all one word.com. You can order it there, and then it's on Amazon and such, and you can Kindle order it. It's quite fun. I'm looking forward to doing some classes and courses. One of the things you can do as a business, you can go on there and say, I want Rob and his team to come out and facilitate a course on lunch sack leadership. And I already have had several people invite me to come do it. And so it's brand new, and I haven't done one of these conferences yet as far as a work group where I'm coming out to a specific organization. But we're going to have the sandwiches out there. It's going to be pretty fun. It's going to be a really, really fun exercise. I'm excited.
Rob, to have a position so important as you have, because being a top leader in technology for an entire state is not easy. It's a lot of responsibility. How do you get there, Rob? How do you manage to grow so fast in your career?
Well, my career was actually rather slow coming on when it comes to the IT progression. I started out doing help desk. I started out in the military, actually, doing communications and IT in the tactical environment. So that was really high speed. That was really the foundation for the way that I operate. And I talk about that a lot in the book, but that was really the foundation for how I operate, because I got addicted to seeing how a team can perform and achieve outstanding results, and actually have a third party tell you, you guys did outstanding, you blew all the records, and to go out into the field and practice and fail until you get it perfect, and then know that you're ready for the mission, and then be able to do that same mission in the real world, right? It's not an exercise. It's actually real, and just exceed the standards in every way. That is something that became a part of my core. And so I've really been a person that chases after that type of team environment because it's so fantastic. There's an analogy of getting to the top of the mountain, but you're there by yourself. And it's fine if you get there and you have a personal accomplishment or you accomplish a certain goal, but it is so much more enjoyable when you have people that you like around you and people that you've worked with and you've done it together. It's the difference between individual sports and team sports. You obviously get a lot of value in completing things as an individual and winning, but there's nothing that's more attractive to me, at least, than winning as a team. Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of competence, where every member of the team is contributing all their competence and knowledge into the goal and the ultimate mission. So that overall is what got me there. You start having teams that happen like that. And it could be a team that you formed from scratch. It could be a team that you inherited. But by using some of these leadership techniques and tools and having it become a part of who you are, that is all the difference, because then everywhere you go, you start forming amazing teams, and teams are what win. Great teams are what win. So that's really what's gotten me to where I am as a leader, is being surrounded by unbelievable people, forming great teams, being mutually dependent on each other, knowing that I can trust you and you can trust me, that I'm watching out for you and you're also watching out for me, and that together we're stronger. We're going to go do this as a group, to be considerate of one another's preferences, to be kind, but to also know that, hey, we've got a job to do. We've got a mission to accomplish. And that's really the essence of success, in my opinion, because your leadership is only what it is by the people that you're surrounded by. And then also by the gifts and being a good listener. A a lot of these things are what they would consider to be soft skills. Technology changes really rapidly, but you'll find as you grow in your career, the soft skills are what make the difference with your teams. And that's been my experience on how I've gotten to be a CTO for Oklahoma. And I have great peers, right? There's the state CIO, there's directors around. There's all kinds of peers in my organization that are phenomenal and that I work side by side with, and they're knocking it out of the park every day.
That's beautiful, Rob. You know, I consider when you say the United States of America, the country is so big and so prosperous that I consider each state like its own little country, right?
It is.
And when you mentioned the whole achieving as a group, that's why we have progressed so much as humans. It reminded me of the books of Proverbs. 2 days ago, I was doing a devotional with my wife, and we read Proverbs 30, and it says there that even the ants, being so vulnerable, they gather their food in the summer so that they can survive in the winter, and they do it as a group. And if you look at an ant, like if you look at a documentary on ants, you see how every single ant know what they need to do and how to help each other to build these incredible cities underneath the earth. It's amazing, and so they collaborate. And so it's an amazing example of why we are the way we are. And if we wouldn't have leaders, especially in technology, we wouldn't have grown so fast. If you look at the progress of technology, it only happened in the last 100 years, right? Like when I was in my 20s, they came out with the cell phones. I mean, like we didn't have cell phones before.
Right? I remember those days.
And look at it now, right? Like we're talking about AI, automation. You know, take a look at my team, for example. You know, I run a software consulting firm, and we do custom applications for other businesses. And my hiring slowed down because now with AI, 40% of the code we write is done automatically by AI already. So my engineers had to graduate into prompt architects. You know, it's incredible. And this is 2024. Imagine what's going to happen 2 years from now, right?
It is. It's incredible, actually. There's a lot of work to be done. It's a very exciting time to be in the business. Super exciting because we're really at the ground floor of something very special, and we have the ability to shape it, particularly when it comes to AI and governance and how we're going to be using it in our communities. It's phenomenal. I'm very, very excited about the future, especially hopefully we have, and I'm encouraged by what I hear from other IT leaders on how intentional they're going to be about making sure they've got guardrails and using AI responsibly. So that's encouraging because nothing's like turning something on and then suffering all the ramifications of it later because you didn't consider what the end in mind was. So if we begin with the end in mind, with this, what are we trying to get to? What are we trying to accomplish? And it brings up a lot of deep human philosophical questions on how do I want to interact with my neighbors? How do I want to interact with David and my neighbor down the street? Or if I'm on an airplane, or I'm traveling on a bus, or I'm riding in my car, what is that going to look like for me in the future? Am I going to be with my head down on my phone? Am I going to be relying on a machine? What is that going to be? So it's important we think of all of that. I personally like human interaction. I like being able to look people in the eyes and shake their hands and enjoy a meal with them. And all this advancement in technology begs the question on, are we actually creating more distance between us as people instead of bringing us closer together? So, and I love technology. It has so many tools that can change the world, but we would be remiss not to consider what the end result might be. Are we actually getting farther and farther apart as people, where our relationships are suffering because of technology now? And there's lots of research that's been done around this. It's very interesting, but it's a big, big topic, and everything's on the table. When I'm at these conferences, everything's on the table. How humans interact, the ethics of it, the data governance, what is our society going to look like? What are we going to automate? Do humans have consent? Do we put a human in the loop? What does it look like when we're sharing data? Are we going to turn on these learning models across multiple data sets? how do we actually manage all of that extraordinarily complex questions?
And it does affect leadership a lot too. Like I said before, like people that are in tech, especially coders, if they don't grab a hold of their leadership skills, they might need to be replaced by a bot, you know, because I think the people that are going to survive in this economy and in this technology, and this technology evolution is the people that are able to interact with the client or with their internal client and be able to translate those requirements into actual applications. For now, we have people in the middle, right? Like we have systems analysts, business analysts, and the coders tend to hide themselves behind the screen, and they say, "Oh, don't talk to me about people. Let's tell me what you want me to do, and I'll write it." And I was one of those guys. And I remember like being approached by one of my mentors. They said, "You are a great coder. You became an awesome architect. It's time for you to choose. Do you want to stay and specialize in technology, which is fine, or do you want to jump into the leadership?" Because he knew that I could actually have that bridge, and so he led me through the leadership path. But to you, how did that work? Like, how did you actually get out of help desk and eventually out of technology into a more leadership role?
Well, I will say that not everyone wants to lead people. I get a lot of joy out of it for the reasons I said earlier, which is having an amazing team and being able to lead a team. Mm-hmm. It also means that you're a good follower. So the teams that I was a part of that were the most successful, I wasn't necessarily the leader. So I was actually following leaders and saying to myself, this is so great to be a part of this team. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And then through time, you start to advance and really show some great things as far as what you've accomplished and the way you've saved companies money or made them money. And the next thing you know, they would like you to be the leader. So then it's really your turn, and you remember all the lessons that you learned in the past. The key is with it is competence also, right? You have to stay abreast of the technology and the terms and have a working understanding. The good news is a lot of technology, as rapidly as it changes, has changed over the years. There's a lot of parts about it that are the same. For example, TCP/IP. Yeah. All the language and the stuff that revolves around that is the whole internet's architected off of the same thing that you and I were using in the 90s, and it actually predates that. Yeah. Right? And so there was a little bit of an argument back then with IPX, like what's going to be the internet's choice of protocol. But TCP/IP is still the protocol. If you have knowledge of how to use that, it applies today. You can talk to your firewall people, you can talk to your network people. Switch configurations and stuff like this have become much more easy. It used to be command line, now it's all user interface. So, but it's the same thing as the command line. That if you're clicking on a button in the UI, it's basically just running the command in the background in a lot of ways. So, and then you've seen the advancements in intrusion detection and prevention and all these different tools that they have that are software based. And then every once in a while, you'll have really big innovations that come breaking out of the seams. I remember, and so when I'm saying all of this, because it's a part of your question on how do you actually get into the leadership roles. As part of it is actually understanding when you see big technology shifts, and you maintain confidence in all those technologies as they go through time, right? So it's linear sometimes in nature. So I remember when I had 35 physical servers, and you could take 30 now, and when virtualization came out for hypervisors, you could take your 35 physical servers and put it on 2, and you virtualize it. So now you don't need 35 servers. That was a massive technology jump. Then this idea of being able to containerize workloads with containers like Docker, unbelievable. The revolutionary, because now instead of having to say I can only have these resources assigned, it started with hypervisors where I could actually split my resources up and say, I'm assigning this much memory and GPU and CPU to this particular hypervisor, and here's the storage array I'm going to attach to it. So that was kind of the beginning. But once you did that, you couldn't necessarily go in and change it every day. And later they came up with this idea that you could dynamically have it where it scales by itself. If it sees that the workload's too heavy, it automatically provides more GPU and CPU. The containerization was a completely different thing. It's one specific workload that was software based that you could assign resources to, not necessarily a hypervisor. So that was transformational. This new AI is not necessarily new, but the advent of it becoming usable and not just an academic thing is another huge leap. And then we're going to see massive gains in security. Uh, there's this new thing called fully functional data in use encryption. It's called FFDUE, a phenomenal technology where your data is encrypted all the time and you can query it. You do not have to decrypt it to actually get all of it. You don't have to decrypt all of it. Typically, the way it works now is if I want to query a database, I would write a query, it would decrypt the whole database, grab the information that I need, and then give it back to me and then re-encrypt the database. The fully functional data and use encryption now, which is going to be hitting the world by storm, it's already started, is I can actually query all the information and data that I have, but the data does not have to be decrypted as a whole. Only what I'm searching for gets returned back to me. It's a massive shift. So between the AI and that, which is good that they're coming out together at the same time, we've got some exciting time. Buckle up, buckle your seatbelt, because we've got some very exciting times ahead of us as technologists. And that's really how you kind of do it is you maintain your competencies in those areas, and then you try to forecast what the future might look like. And that's really, really helpful. I would say those are probably the two things. And then be a good people person. Go take some leadership training.
Yeah.
Be formally trained in leadership. You can go get all the technical certs also, and that's highly encouraged. But if you're not also doing the same thing for leadership, I would say that you should be investing heavily in personality assessments, on how to lead teams. There's so many courses and programs out there that could make you a better leader. So you're actually prepared when the opportunity comes. So don't wait until the management position is offered to you or a senior leadership role is offered to you to get skilled up on leadership. Do it now. It should be part of your career development, and you should spend and invest time and money in it. Understand organizational behavior, understand personality types, understand team dynamics, understand how to have better hospitality and workplace culture, how to build excellent culture. These things are really what differentiate someone that remains in a technical path, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with staying on a technical path. But if the opportunity comes, you may not be ready. So I would say be ready. Even if you say to yourself, I'm probably never going to go and do that leadership thing because it's just not me. Until the right opportunity comes knocking on your door, and then you don't want to find yourself ill prepared.
And also, I think you need to learn to lead yourself too. And leadership is also, like you were saying, you were following a leader in this great team and you achieved great things and without having to be the leader. Those basic skill sets, I mean, if you're a complete introvert and a genius in computer science, you're going to have a horrible end. I know because I've seen people do that. You have to develop your social skills, don't you?
You do. I will say I'm in a unique position now. It's sort of rare. I'll give you another winning strategy, and it could be a nice little note that you can remember for the listeners, is if I can find myself, if I'm following a leader and I find myself agreeing with them in the 90 percentile or higher, even the high 80s, it's almost impossible to fail. Like, I'm really fortunate in the situation I'm in now, where the structure and the way they designed things, saying, hey, this is the direction that we think we should be going. And when you find yourself checking the boxes in the 90s, like you're 91%, I might do it a little bit different here and there. It's no way. It's really hard to fail that way. And so if you have the gift, and I'm there right now, actually, it's a gift given to me that I happen to be following a leader that I agree with in 90% of the time. If you're in a situation where that's not the case and you're disagreeing with all the decision, man, you are learning a lot about life and how difficult it can be when you're trying to
right?
Yeah, when you're following a leader. Yeah, you're following a leader, just like, I would not do it that way at all. I would do it the opposite. If you find yourself saying that a lot, you're actually in for quite a run, and it's going to be super challenging. Don't give up. You can still do it. I've done it. But I'm in a situation now, and I've had a few leaders in my career where I'll follow this person to the end of the earth, and not just because you agree with them all the time, it's in the 90 percentile, but also because they're treating you with great dignity and respect.
Yeah.
And they have the soft skills. It's something magical happens when you have a leader that you're like, I believe in this vision. And then that vision is surrounded with courteousness and kindness and hospitality and consideration. When that happens, something very special happens culturally. And you'll find the most successful companies in the world have this element where you've got people that are in those organizations that have that. They cast a vision that it's easy to get behind because they're making really informed decisions about where the technology or the product roadmap might be going. And then you see it wrapped with the culture. And sometimes the culture will actually produce the vision. That is a really great way to win. When you have the culture itself organically creating a vision and forecast, then you're already there because it's created from the ground up. But if you have a leader that comes in and they're casting the vision, then and they wrap that around some of these areas, consideration, kindness, treating their people well, having good culture, driving out toxic behaviors, being aware of what they are and red flagging them and taking action. A great way for people to get demoralized is when you see obvious toxic people in an organization and nothing's being done about it. It makes everyone want to throw up their hands. So if you can get those two things together, God, you've got something special. You got something that you never want to stop. You get up in the morning, you do your exercising at whatever time of the day you do it, and you cannot wait to start and to get surrounded by the people that you start to care about, actually. It's more than just work at that point. You're actually doing something special. You're changing the world together. And that's great. If you can, I really would encourage anyone to try to get themselves in a situation like that as quick as they can and search for it. See if you can find it. If you're in a situation where you have influence and you could be the one that creates it, go for it. Go for it. Create it now. There's no reason. You don't have to be running around and saying, well, this team's not working out. Make it happen in your own teams. Even if you're just a contributor, you're not necessarily the leader. I can't tell you how many people in my career where I've been the leader and the contributors themselves transform me because they're so influential. Be that person.
You know, Rob, one of the things that I have the gift of is, because of my computer science background, is that I can recognize patterns. And I've interviewed a lot of people that serve in the military. I've served for 2 years too when I was a kid. And there is nothing better to become a great leader than to learn how to be a great follower. You cannot be a leader if you're not a good follower. You said it before, half an hour ago. And when I got to the military, they taught me how to follow, and it was a straight line, and you have to obey the orders no matter what. And then as you keep growing inside the same institution, you start to give those orders, but your foundation is strong. And I think that's one of the things that you and I have in common that got us, propelled us to our leadership journey, isn't it?
No doubt about it. That component is big, and not necessarily because of the hierarchy of, hey, now I'm in charge, and not necessarily because of the structure. I think it's because of the empathy. For example, if you've ever been in food service, and you have someone that serves you well at a restaurant, because you used to be a server, then you're like, this is great service. Or if something's going wrong that they can't control, you have a lot more grace with them. And it's the same thing, right? Once you're in a position of, if you've been a follower for a while, no matter what your position was, and now you're in a position of authority, if you're reflective and intentional, you'll look back and go, I remember when I was in that exact same place. And it changes the way you approach it. If you're coming there with a hammer, the hammer should almost never be used, very rarely. I'm not saying it shouldn't be used. Sometimes a hammer is necessary, but it should be very rare it's used. So having that empathy there, I think, is what the connection is. Like, hey, I remember when I was standing in a straight line and I was the one accepting orders, and now I'm giving them. So now it gives you context that in a lot of organizations, it doesn't exist. So it is special. It is special in that way, because because of the empathy and being in the exact same position and the way that it works as far as everyone has to go through the same thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Rob, it's 1:47 already, and it's been incredible how fast, 30, 40 minutes went by, and I want to respect your time. So before we end the podcast, I'll ask you one last question. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
What would I write on it? This is such a great question. I would say, be kind to one another. Kindness is something, and courtesy. I mean, you have these things now. It's hard not to get addicted on the reels. On social media, you see people doing acts of kindness, and it's wonderful. We need more of that, and it applies in your corporate culture. Being kind to one another and being courteous is something that everyone deserves. If you're being nice to the cashier who is getting your groceries, or someone you're getting, you have just a transaction with, if you can be courteous to them, how much more courteous should you be to the people you're working with every day?
And if people will follow that rule, we'll live in such a different world, such a better world. Instead of trying to defend yourself and being so cautious about not harming yourself, against other people, if people are just more kind and more open, it would be such a beautiful place, wouldn't it?
It would be. And a lot of leaders confuse that with being weak or soft. It's not true at all, actually, because you still have the same mission and goals to accomplish. This doesn't mean that kindness means you're abandoning your goals or that you're somehow lowering the standards. When people view the world that way, it's a shame. So being kind and courteous to one another, you can be kind and courteous, and you can do an excellent job and knock it out of the park and change the world with what you're trying to do from a work perspective. And you can still be courteous. They can mutually exist together. So that's what I would put on a billboard, yeah.
Beautiful, Rob. Thank you so much for your time. God bless you. If people would like to follow you, ask more questions, where can they find you online?
Lunchsackleadership.com.
Longsackleadership.com. And the first thing I'll do is I'll go check out your book right now.
Thank you very much. It's great. I think you'll be entertained. It'll make you smile, which was the whole reason that I wrote it.
Fantastic, Rob. Thank you so much. God bless, and I'll see you in the other episode.
God bless you, David. Take care, friend.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.